that is taking over the world. Every country should be able to design a democracy that is suitable to its own culture. That is why once the kind of democracy that was bequeathed to us by the liberal democracy, representative democracy that was bequeathed to us by the colonial masters, virtually is not working as it were. So you have to build in some elements of our traditional content into it. And because the people who are practicing it are not well tutored, it requires a lot of maturity to practice democracy. And since that is not happening, we see a situation where politicians, we have professional politicians and not professionals in politics. Because once you see politics as a profession, it now becomes a situation where without politics you cannot survive. And that is why so many of them are, they are seen as a source of livelihood. Once they are out of power, well, as the money they made in the next 1 year, because they cannot account for it. They are not trained in they don't have the talent to do so any other business outside politics.
Doctor, I really want to milk the opportunity of having you in studio, so I'm going to deviate a bit and take you back to what we saw yesterday happen in Sierra Leone. The president who actually sacked his deputy for seeking asylum in another country. How do you see that?
Well, the office of the presidency is so powerful. And, the sacking of the deputy, I don't know what the contents of the provision of the Constitution of Sierra Leone is, whether the president has the power to sack his deputy under the circumstances. But the issue is that, there are more, subtle ways of settling this thing. After two of them had that mandate initially. So they should be able to, most of the time settle it because of the fact that at the end of the day, who suffers is the people, because it's going to create some kind of animosity, and it has some kind of inherent, attributes that will, as it were, have a multiplier effect on the rest of society.
So you just said the rest of society. How do you believe the rest of the world? Now I believe the attention is on Nigeria, sure. Especially as this time next week on Saturday. How do you think this election influences the way we're seen by the rest of the world, this particular one, this 2015 general elections?
Well, a lot of things are at stake, and Nigeria being the most populous country in Africa, we're being looked up to as the leader of the most populous country, the largest democracy in the black world. So when you get it right, it tells a lot of things, it says a lot of signal across the world that the country, because aside Botswana and which other country now in Africa, South Africa, well, it has some common here and there. But outside Botswana, that is highly rated as a highly democratized country in the whole of Africa. Outside that, I don't see any other country that has actually, been following what could be seen as a semblance of democracy. That is why Peter Eke in his work called it democratism, not democracy in Africa. So if Nigeria gets this right, it's going to be something that other African countries, we want to emulate, and from there, the idea of deepening democracy will now follow suit.
Dr. Godwin Okeke, thank you so much for joining me in studio today. Really appreciate your time. Dr. Godwin Okeke is a senior lecturer for the Department of Political Science in the University of Lagos, and he's been telling us about the issue of political violence in Africa and also preparations for the upcoming general elections on Saturday next week. Like he said, go out there and get your permanent voter cards. Now to Mali. The Malian government has backed out of peace talks, saying it would not participate in further talks with rebels seeking autonomy for northern Mali, leaving the future of a UN-brokered peace process in question. A collapse in peace talks could leave the question of North Mali's political status open indefinitely, and that's a factor that may be exploited by Islamist militants active in the region. Mediators had been working for months to facilitate talks between a group of Tuareg-led rebels from the north and southern government in Bamako aimed at ending decades of northern uprisings. Bamako signed a preliminary proposal in early March, but the rebels rejected it this week, saying it did not grant enough autonomy for a region they call Azawad. The government's refusal to reopen discussions comes a day after the rebel coalition known as the Coordination of Azawad Movement agreed to another round of talks without setting a date or location. Mediators from the United Nations, the African Union, France, China, Russia, and Algeria have flown to the rebel stronghold town of Kidal in an attempt to salvage the peace process. We'll take another break now on Network Africa. When we come back, the Vice President of Zimbabwe has confirmed that 5 inmates died after being shot by police in last week's prison protest. We'll have details for you on that story and more in a moment. Please stay with us.